All right, welcome back. We continue right here on Pittsburgh CW. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Bob Pompeani and Gene Collier with you. 412-575-2600. Let's get right to it. Mark first in Greensburg. Hey, Mark, how are you?
Great, Bob. Nice to talk to you and Gene. I actually do know that they can rescind Bell's contract. From what I understand, within like 2 weeks.
I think there's a limit. You get to a certain point where you can't do it. If you want to do it, you still can. And there's a misnomer out there that people think you can trade him. You cannot trade him because he's not signed.
But I also want to mention the Steelers, I think, and I'm going to be one of them, I will not watch LeVeon Bell play until he's done in Pittsburgh because I just can't. I mean, somebody that's that arrogant and everything.
You will. If he has 150 yards when he comes back and a couple of touchdowns or whatever, you'll watch. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but he's certainly not making any more friends, I can tell you that. Thank you for the call. Gene, let me ask you this. I was in the locker room today, and a lot of players seem to, really sing the praises of James Conner and say, hey, we're not concerned about LeVeon at all. Let's hypothetically say this goes on for a couple of weeks, and they start slowly and lose a game maybe they should win, and he's still not there. When does that change?
Oh, I think it'll change pretty quickly.
Because you're affecting your ability to win a championship potentially by not showing up.
If you go to Cleveland and lose 17-10, things will change in a hurry. That attitude will change.
And you'll see that publicly? People, start to vent a little bit?
I should think so. Not everybody in the first week, but somebody, and then gradually more.
All right, it's back to the lines we go. Line 2. It's Tony in Hill District. Hey, Tony, what's up?
Hello, Bob. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. I would like to know if hold on, let me turn my TV down. I can't hear you guys.
Sure.
I would like to know if he don't sign his franchise tag, can they fine him behind that? And I also want to say, you guys, to me, is so hooked on LeVeon Bell that you guys are not looking at it as a team effort. To me, he's going to hurt this team by him being the way he is about the money. I get the gist of the contract negotiations and everything, but I just really hope they let him go next year.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. I think this is it for him, Gene, right? I mean, there's no other solution.
Who's to say? What if they win the Super Bowl with LeVeon Bell?
You think they'll sign him to the kind of money he wants? There's no way.
I don't know. They could tag him again, right?
They could tag him again, which would be even more bizarre if we have to go through this again.
Yeah, I know, but it's not going to be. If they tag him again, the tag is not going to be much more than.
No, it'll be like $25 million. It'll be huge.
That's what the tag will be?
It'll be huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
I think last year was 12-2, went to 14-5, and I think it goes up significantly in the third time you do it. I think. If I'm wrong, please someone let me know. But I think that's what I saw. But my point is, I just don't think it's going to come to that. He's not here right now because I think he's seen some of that money with Gurley. He wants the guaranteed money. He might be willing to risk 9 weeks of pay this year, which would be crazy for anyone to turn his back on $8.5 million. But he might be doing that if he thinks he can get $50 million guaranteed in the offseason.
He might.
He might. I mean, who knows? Let's go to line 5. That's Mike in Bethel Park. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, hey, Gene. Hey, Bob. Love your show.
Thank you.
What I wanted to talk about is... Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. What are you doing over there?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah,
That's
what
right.
I wanted to mention here, I think this Sunday's game is dangerous.
It is.
I think the Steelers, with a lot of distractions walking up there to Cleveland, I know they were 0-16 last year, but nothing better for them if they would take Pittsburgh to the woodshed with all the distractions we have. I think it's possible on Sunday we can get beaten up there. What do you think?
Gene, what do you think?
I think that's possible. I do. I just have a feeling about it. Todd Haley's up there. There's all kinds of buzz around the Browns. There's a lot of uncertainty on Pittsburgh's defense in particular. I think you can lose any NFL game, and I think the Steelers can lose that one. I do.
There are some matchup issues when you look at the secondary. Josh Gordon is going to play, it looks like. Jarvis Landry's another newcomer they have there. Tyrod Taylor, I don't know how you think of him, but I'm not necessarily sold that he's going to be their guy.
No, I view him as kind of the replacement player, if you will, allow that baseball analogy. He's the average NFL quarterback.
Line 4 we go, and it is Waylon in Washington. Hey, Waylon, how you doing?
Hi, Bob. Hi, Gene.
Hey.
Good.
Hey, just a couple of questions. Mike from Bethel just took my question for you. I think they might have a rough time up in Cleveland. However, did number 99 Adams make the team? And
Practice
the other, The other question is, Bob, do you ever sleep? I mean, you're always working.
He never
you know?
does.
I should sleep more. I'll be up late tonight. Gene, how long do you stay up when you go home?
5 minutes.
5 minutes and you're out.
Well, no, sometimes 17 minutes if I walk the dog. Yeah. So there it is.
I'm up till like 3:30.
Really?
Can't sleep. I just can't. Anyway, number 99, Keon Adams, was cut, but he's back on the practice squad.
Right.
So were you surprised at any other of those moves aside from
Nope,
the
only,
quarterback?
only Landry Jones.
Yeah, I wasn't, like I said, I thought I'd seen the maturation of Dobbs, and you know, the fact that Jones was at the end of a deal, I think, also probably factored into it. And who's to say? I think it's a foregone conclusion. Everybody makes it sound like, well, Landry Jones is the only guy who can win one game if need be. Who's to say that Josh Dobbs can't? Who's to say that Mason Rudolph can't? We haven't seen that.
Somebody who's never been in a game can win a game.
Exactly.
Ben Roethlisberger did it.
Line 2. It's Tony in Brookline. Tony, welcome to the Nightly Sports Call. How are you?
Yeah, Bob, I just have one comment. What do you think Chuck Noll would have done with this clown LeVeon Bell?
Well, the rules were different then, too. I mean, he's playing this as a business decision. Again, you really can't do anything at this point. If you should rescind the,
No, I mean,
all of a sudden he becomes a free agent, you're entitled to some sort of compensation, but I don't think it's much more than a third-round pick. I don't know what it would be.
no, the question is, you know, as you said, not relevant. I mean, they would have done with Le'Veon Bell what they did with Franco Harris. He'd be gone. But that was before these set of rules. Now everybody has agreed to these set of rules, including every owner in the league. Everybody has agreed that this is the system, and Le'Veon Bell is taking advantage of that system, and he should, because he's only going to play a little while longer.
All right, we have a couple of tweets before we go to a break here, and one of them is from Pete Hiles. And Pete writes, Steelers would have to pay Bell 144% of previous salary if they take him for a third year in a row, according to the NFL. I knew it was a big number, and that would probably indicate that would be, because I'm not good at percentages. Gene, are you?
Well, they're making about $19 million.
19 million, okay. Still, that's 1 year, 19 million for a running back. That's an awful lot of money, I think.
Yep.
Mark Schwartz says there are 672,000 homeless people in this country, 44 homeless veterans, 14.2 million living in poverty. Bell should be ashamed. Hey, listen, it's a business decision he's doing. It's the way this is set up. He's one of those guys who is playing a really violent game, and he wants the money that is available to him. I don't have a problem with the way this is going necessarily, but I also, Gene, believe that this team must come first. And if you're really, truly trying to help your teammates win, which should be part of this, he should be here.
Yeah, that's not the way most NFL players think.
No.
I mean, they're in it for themselves. I frankly don't blame them.
All right, we're due for a break. We have Dave in Maryland coming up next. Stick around. You're watching the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.